The car. No other invention in history has so totally changed the way the world looks and the way we live our lives. And I'm not just talking about the fact that designing, making, selling, hiring, servicing, repairing and scrapping cars provides a sixth of all jobs in the civilized world. Just go into any city, especially here in the States, and see how the planning and layout of the place is absolutely dominated by the needs of the automobile. This is even more remarkable when you consider that only a century ago, this invention didn't even have a name. That's right, when Gottlieb Daimler walked out of his garage in 1884 with a huge smile on his face, he didn't say, "I've invented the car." He said, "I've invented the Mercedes," named after his daughter of the same name. Just think, Mercedes owners, if his daughter had been called Fritzi or Heidi, you might now be showing off to your friends your brand new Heidi Benz. In 1792, Oliver Evans applied for a US patent in Philadelphia for a steam land carriage and called it an Eructor Amphibolus, but nobody could pronounce it. Another of the first patents, from New Yorker George Selden, called the invention a road engine. Now that may have stuck if it hadn't been for a load of other people around the world who realised what a major invention the car was going to be, and they devised new names to give the impression that theirs was the new invention. Boy, the patent office must have been busy. Here are some of the bizarre names put forward for the invention in the early part of the 20th century. So, of course, in the end, the French word automobile made it, and so did the word car, which actually comes from the ancient Celtic word carus, meaning cart or wagon. But just think about it. Somewhere in a parallel universe, everyone could be driving around in locomotors. We're briefly back in the UK to visit the home of Jim Thornburt and one of the best collections of American classic cars outside of the USA. Now, if you're into chrome fins and over-the-top dimensions, you'll be in heaven here. Today we're going to look at Jim's '63 Corvette. Well, there's a lot going on here in your workshop, Jim, where you keep all these fabulous cars in pristine condition. And the '63 Corvette, now by now, this was quite a well-established vehicle or model, wasn't it?
Oh, of course, yes. This is the car that was competing with our E-Type here.
Right.
Oh, yes, and very much in demand in the States. Of course, we couldn't get them over here at the time. It's only in the last 10 years that they've really filtered into the UK.
And where did you find this one?
Well, this car came over from Florida with a gentleman who was getting towards 70 years of age. He delighted in driving it, but realised as 5 years went on after he brought it over here that it would be a hard drive for him to do in the future. So he decided he'd like to take an easier car back, and indeed he took back from me to Florida a 1966 Thunderbird, believe it or not. A beautiful car.
I think it was a good swap. And, you know, the styling's fantastic. These bumped wings here, which were, I think, taken from Bill Mitchell's 1957 racing version of the Stingray as well.
Yes.
Another thing they did here was that they realised by having a really low chassis that it'd improve handling through the corners. And
that's right, and of course they did this leather chassis, didn't they, to strengthen the car. So, which is pretty unique because it's very rigid on the road, you know, when you're travelling. And
the ladder chassis is on this version, is it?
Oh, yes, it is indeed.
Because before that, of course, they'd had the cross.
Yes. No, this one has a leather chassis, and it's very, very solid car and a beautiful drive.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a recurring theme, isn't it, in a lot of classic cars.
It is, yes.
You know, people talk about, you know, muscle power and all sorts.
Particularly in that era.
And extensions of various sorts. But you're saying that was probably a
similar
to
the Jaguar. The E-Type Jaguar had symbolised something very similar. Yes.
It's all male, isn't it?
It is all male, yes, but I'm sure the ladies would love to drive that car.
The name Corvette is one of the most famous in the world, and Jim's 63 is getting to be in top knit condition. Well, we'll be back here next week to take a look at another in his collection. And if you've never heard of the words Ventiports or the Dynaflow system, all will be revealed then. Meanwhile, let's fly back to North America. Just about every American city is built on a grid system, and it can be confusing and complicated to know exactly where you are in a city because things tend to look the same. But there is a very simple numbering system which tells you precisely where you are at any given time. For instance, this is the Colorado Springs Post Office. It's in the center of downtown. It is on Block 1, and from here, everything else spreads out accordingly. So, Block 2, Block 3, and so on. Heading north, Block 2, into infinity and south. So when you see very high numbers into the thousands, it doesn't mean there are thousands of buildings on that street. It's just telling you where you are in relation to the central point of downtown, the post office. And the clever numbers game doesn't end at the town or city level. It works nationally too. Look at this. If you're driving on the interstates across country, if you're going from east to west, all the interstates are even numbers. North to south, they're all odd numbers. So you always basically know which direction you're going. Which way are you heading, cowboy? Looking for gold? Then head west, young man.
Hey, come with me. You are in for an incredible treat. Britain's never seen this place. I'm seeing it for the first time, and so are you. This is a special Cadillac Heritage Museum. It's not even open to the public. They have Cadillacs here like no one else. Come and have a look. We're going to meet Greg Wallace. He's the director of the Historical Museum here for the Cadillac Motor Company, and here he is now. Greg?
Welcome.
Adrian, good to meet you. You have a wonderful place here. Tell me a little bit in general what it all means to somebody that's interested in Cadillacs.
Well, Cadillac has been the leader in innovation and technology and styling for the better part of the last 100 years. And in our collection here we have a representation of all the great things that happened at Cadillac in the last 100 years.
This room represents what years, from the earliest
From
to?
1903 up through the 90s.
Incredible. So this is 1903.
This is a 1903 Model A runabout. It's the first model Cadillac. It features the single-cylinder engine, which made 10 horsepower, and the car would go upwards of 30 miles per hour.
Air conditioning, too.
Air conditioning as well. Right. This is the 1959 Eldorado Brits convertible, and this is the ultimate in tail fins. The tail fin was inspired on the 1948 Cadillac by the P-38 Lightning aircraft. It evolved from a small bump on the back fender up until you see a 45-inch tall tail fin.
Your colleague was telling me earlier today that that was because there was not a lot of work for auto designers during the war, so they went to look at some aircraft, and that's what inspired?
Well, I think it's when you look at the whole art and science theme, aircraft has always been the pinnacle of science, and it falls hand in hand with the design of the vehicles as well.
Tell me what else you've got for me. Something over here is really old. I don't know where it stands in the heritage, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
We have a very unique car here. This is the first concept vehicle that Cadillac built. It's the first closed-bodied automobile. Henry Leland, who you see pictured here, this was his personal car.
Really?
The reason why the car is so tall is Henry Leland was very tall as well.
That's
Henry
incredible.
Henry figured that if it worked for horse-drawn carriages, it ought to work for the automobile. So here we have the Osceola, which was named after the famous Seminole Indian chief.
Beautiful color combination here. Tell me about this one. This is a LaSalle?
This is a 27 LaSalle. The LaSalle was a entry-level Cadillac. It filled the price gap between the highest priced Buick and the lowest priced Cadillac. It's also the first car to be exclusively designed by an automobile stylist.
What year are we looking at here?
This is 1948. This is the first all-new body style for Cadillac after the Second World War. It was design inspired off the P-38 Lightning aircraft, which was a famous World War II fighter aircraft. That aircraft featured twin rudder booms as well as radiator duct openings in the side of its fuselage, and they incorporated those styling
Down the
cues
back there, yeah.
into the 4860 Special.
And look at the chrome on there. It's unbelievable, the amount of chrome on that car. Absolutely fantastic. I guess the manufacturing prices are exorbitant to give us chrome like that nowadays.
Next in the collection, Adrian, we have a 1953 Eldorado. This was the first year for the Eldorado nameplate. It features wraparound windshield, hooded headlamps, as well as a familiar dip in the window sill area, which is a hallmark styling cue of Cadillacs throughout that 50 era.
Is it my eyes, or is there a smoked finish on there?
It has what they call cobalt blue metal flake.
Right.
Very unique color for the Cadillac.
Yeah, it is. It's a very unique color.
Car also features Autronic Eye, which is one of the first nighttime driving aids, which shuts off your high beam headlights with oncoming traffic, which is placed on the dash. This is a 1933 type 355C V8 Cadillac.
Right.
This was the entry-level Cadillac of that period of time. By 1933, we built V8s, V12s, and V16s.
Wow.
The V16 you see behind is the 31, which is
16. That's incredible.
452 cubic inches, 7.4 liter.
Wow.
Also features wood trim inside with German silver inlay. It was the first use of breezy vent windows, which allows you to have a draft-free ventilation. That's how they advertised it.
I think some of our British viewers might know that window idea as a quarter light, as we might call them.
Correct.
And so we're looking at one of the original applications of that.
Absolutely. This is the original. Safety features have always been also a very major concern of Cadillacs, and this has one of the safety door latches. One of the biggest problems with door latches on the early cars was in a collision or the striker would bypass the latch and cause the door to pop open. Well, if you see here, you have this dovetail that fits into a slot, and it does not allow the door to move up and down.
Like a keystone almost.
Keeps it closed.
Right. Very good.
Adrian, this is the 1959 Cyclone. It was the Motorama car for Cadillac in 1959.
What do you mean by Motorama? Let's just talk about that briefly.
General Motors used to feature cars in what they called a Motorama, and it gave people a glimpse of what the future was like in the technology for General Motors.
Very good.
And they ran those from the 50s up through the early 60s. In 1959, they featured this car as a Cadillac. It has some advanced technology as well. It has radar sensing domes in the front.
Radar sensing?
Gives you proximity of what you're approaching in feet, as well as how many feet you need to stop the car.
But do you mean radar sensing as in a fuzzbuster?
It has radar dishes underneath the front domes, and what it does is give you a proximity of what you're approaching.
Really?
On a gauge.
Isn't that something?
Also has a one-piece bubble top that slides, that clamshells over. Front-mounted engine with rear-mounted transmission and transaxle, very similar to what the C5 Corvette is today and some earlier Porsches and that kind of stuff. So
amazing.
Technology is very high on this early car. The door is very unique as it pulls out like a plug door and then slides down the length of the body.
Look at that. That's amazing.
And you see that feature on some of our vans. So a lot of the technology you see on these early concept vehicles do actually make it
every side door on vans today, Fords or what have you, they've all got that now. Wow.
Adrian, this is the 1953 Le Mans Motorama car. This is a very interesting car as well. This car actually left General Motors and went to Bud Goodman, who was head of Fisher Body at the time.
Sure.
The car came back under Harley Earl's direction and received a restyle.
Beautiful.
They added the quad headlamps to the car, as well as some treatments to the tail fins.
This is Audrey Hepburn to me, Greta Garbo.
Very, very much so, 50s.
Is it? Yeah?
A lot of aircraft-inspired design. You can see the radiator duct openings like I talked about on the 60 Special. In some form, they've used that styling cue. The gauges inside are aircraft-inspired. It's also a fiberglass car.
Is it?
General Motors introduced fiberglass cars in 1953 on the Corvette, but this is more than likely with some sort of a styling cue, or styling exercise.
Now, what was the reason for fiberglass? Why did General Motors introduce fiberglass?
I think fiberglass was an alternative to metal. It didn't rust. It was lightweight, very strong.
Greg, I see another Eldorado here. It's obviously got some significance if it's in this building.
Yes, this is the Eldorado Brougham. These were built from 1957 to 1960 in very limited numbers. For 57, they built 400 of these, and they feature things you take for granted as new and innovative.
Really?
The car has memory seats, what they called favorite position.
Really?
The car has air ride suspension, sand-cast aluminum bumpers, forged aluminum wheels, first use of narrow white wall tires on an automobile.
Things that today we take for granted, but they were really in use back then and very effective. This one looks kind of Texas to me.
Yeah, it's a big car. It's the very last of the American-made convertibles. Cadillac held out one extra year and built convertibles in 1976, so as a result we sold 14,000 of them.
Right.
Being 1976 was our bicentennial year here in the United States, they built 200. The last 200 were built were bicentennials, and they featured the red and blue striping as well as the red piping on the interior. Adrian, why don't you push that button in the center of that light there?
This one here?
Yes.
Oh my God.
What that does is conceal the
Look
gas
at
fill.
that.
This is one of the features of a Cadillac from 1941 through 1958, and is the subject of many of a gas station story with people trying to find the gas fill for these early cars.
Is that right? Well, we've had a great time seeing all of the history of Cadillac here, Greg, but I understand you have one special concept car that we should have a look at that's really a nod to the future.
Absolutely, and I'd like to introduce you to Jan Willem Vester, who is our Assistant General Manager of Communications.
Very good. You have a car to show me, I understand. Let's go see it. Great. Jan Willem, this is the future of Cadillac. What we're seeing here is a concept car?
Yes.
Tell me just, for the viewers that aren't familiar with what a concept car is, what does it do for a car company like GM? Why are you building one of these concept cars?
Well, it announces in a very early stage what people can expect in a few years' time down the road.
So this is not in production yet. If this, it is a concept car just to feel the market out, to feel what people are getting, get the buzz and see what happens in the press, and then you move ahead to production.
Exactly.
All right. And this is the Evoque.
This is the Evoque luxury roadster. It is a vehicle, a convertible, but with a retractable hardtop. So it's a hardtop, so it's the, let's say, the ideal combination of both a coupe and a convertible. So this is completely stowed behind the seats.
Sure. When you look at it from a distance, it doesn't look like a Cadillac. It looks like a Ferrari, or it looks like a Bricklin, or it looks like something else other than the saloons we've been seeing.
Well, I take that as a compliment, but on the other hand, it has tons of Cadillac brand character, as we call it.
Sure.
Take again the egg crate grille. You know, that really shouts Cadillac.
That's right.
Then again, the vertical headlights, which
through here,
and stacked with the fog lamps, which really mirrors the vertical taillights in the rear.
Very
and
good.
And then also you see that chiseled look, the crisp and clear lines that you also have seen on the Cadillacs of the 60s.
Correct.
So basically it's taking that theme and gives that a very modern translation. Now, Adrian, it was really a delight to give you a glimpse of the future, but of course what's also very important for us is the kind of vehicles that we sell today.
And in 2001.
Exactly, and I want to show you that right now.
Beautiful. Let's have a good look at that. Well, Jan Willem, I've had a great time looking inside and seeing the amazing heritage that Cadillac has. Let's bring it up to date now and see something on the parking lot. This is a brand new one, I understand.
Yeah, it's a 2000 Cadillac DeVille DTS, top of the line.
Now, walk around the car and tell me some of the things that are true to the form and to the character of the old Cadillacs that we've seen indoors, some of the things that are synonymous in this 2001.
Yes. First of all, of course, the so-called egg crate grille. And here in its most modern form with the night vision camera right in the middle of it. But that egg crate grille really goes back to 1940, where it was first introduced, and we have maintained that. And it's really, as we call it, a very important part of the Cadillac brand character.
The egg crate grille.
Egg crate grille, you see that already.
And the
for
circle
decades.
in the middle is actually the night vision?
That's the night vision camera.
How does that work? Tell me briefly about that technology.
It works with infrared technology, and makes it possible for you to see 3 to 5 times further than with regular headlights. It is projected right there on the windscreen in a head-up display.
During Desert Storm, U.S. soldiers used a form of thermal or infrared imaging for their nighttime maneuvers. Cadillac, with the help of the Raytheon Systems Company, is using the same technology to revolutionize driving safety and security. Cadillac engineer Ed Zellner explains how the night vision system works.
In the grille, we have a night vision camera that picks up the differences in the temperature of the outside surroundings. That camera then translates the image to a small picture tube-like device that then projects that image up onto the windshield.
Zellner says hot objects appear white and cooler objects appear black with night vision. Car buyer Gary Steppen had no idea what he might see when he volunteered to take a test drive.
There was a deer or something there, or a dog. The minute it moved, my eyes caught it.
Immediately, our eyes couldn't compete with Gary. Night vision allows a driver to see 3 to 5 times farther than with low-beam headlights. And that's important if you consider that nighttime driving represents only about a quarter of total driving, but accounts for more than half of all traffic fatalities.
The car has a lot of different characters in itself. Indeed, when you drive at low speed, then maybe the car feels really softly sprung.
Right.
But what you will feel when you really go to higher speeds and the car feels that you're going into some more serious cornering, the suspension system stiffens up.
Jan Willem, tell me, what is the target demographic for such a beautiful car like the Cadillac?
Obviously we have really a vast amount of traditional Cadillac owners, really a very loyal customer base.
Right.
This model sells at a rate of 105,000 a year.
Is that right?
And with that you can really say that it is the backbone of Cadillac sales, since our total sales worldwide are at 200,000. So this model alone counts for over half, so roughly half of all the sales.
One last thing before we go. Earlier you heard us talk about the petrol or the gas cap being underneath the lens on the Cadillac. The real story behind it, God's honest truth. Harley Earl, chief of Cadillac design from 27 to about 1960, came through one day, the shop, and he said, well, where's the gas filler cap? Someone on the floor didn't want to let him down. There wasn't one right here, so they just said, it's underneath the tail lens. He loved the idea. A design feature on the Cadillac that actually happened because of an oversight.
Once the world stepped into the driver's seat and stepped on the gas, there was no looking back. And it's here in America that that long journey has been at its most spectacular, because it's here that the automobile led to a social revolution almost as revolutionary as the motorized industry itself. In fact, American writer and humorist Art Buchwald noted that Americans are broad-minded people. They'll accept the fact that a person can be an alcoholic, a dope fiend, a wife-beater, even a newspaper man. But if a man doesn't drive a car, there's something wrong. See you next week.